Hello, welcome to One Story. I'm Bennett Kelly, and if you're watching this on video, you will notice I am wearing a Boston Red Sox cap. And that is because I just returned from Boston, and while there, I managed to find time to go see a Red Sox game at its fabled home of Fenway Park, which, if you've never been, it's really a great place to watch a ball game. And they played the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, a name I can never quite get used to. But it was a great day, 6-1 victory, and even had a no-hitter going until late in the fifth inning. And our story today has a connection to Fenway and concerns another New Englander who also moved to California and returned to Fenway. And we start our story on opening day, 1964. It's the home opener for the Sox, and stepping up to the plate is a dashing 19-year-old named Tony Conigliaro. And he socked the ball clear of the left field wall, the famous Green Monster, at his very first at bat. And instantly, it was love at first sight with Boston fans and their new local hero, Tony C., as he became known. And Tony went on to have a great rookie year. He seemed destined to be Rookie of the Year when on July 26th, in the first game of a doubleheader, he actually hit his 20th home run. Unfortunately, however, second part of the doubleheader, he got hit by a pitch and broke his arm and was out through September. He finished the season with 24 home runs, the most by a teenager in Major League Baseball till this date. Tony also began making a name for himself off the field. He was quite the man about town, and he was frequently seen at clubs, jumping up on stage to sing with local acts because he had a reputation as a crooner. And someone took advantage of that reputation. And in the off season, he went into the recording studio with Frankie Valli's producing partner, and they put out a couple of singles that became minor hits. One of which was "Playing the Field." So Tony didn't let his music career interfere with his main job, which was hitting home runs for the Boston Red Sox. And in his second season, at the age of 20, Tony led the league in home runs with 32, the youngest player to ever do so. And even still, amazing feat since he missed 15% of the season with after getting hit on the wrist and breaking his wrist. So now we jump forward to 1967, which is an important year in Red Sox lore. It is the year of the impossible dream. And for those who are unfamiliar with Red Sox history, and maybe seemed hard to believe given their recent success, but at this time, the Red Sox were actually quite a sorry baseball franchise. They hadn't won a World Series since 1918. They hadn't even been to the World Series since 1946. Hadn't had a winning season since 1958. And the two prior seasons, they finished 3 games and a half game back. Not from first, but from last place. And so expectations were quite low, which was evident when the fact that less than 9,000 people even went to the home opener in 67. By August 18th, however, they're only a game and a half back. Their fortunes had changed because of 3 All-Stars on the team. One was Carl Yastrzemski, or Yaz as he's known lovingly in New England, was having an epic year. He ended up hitting 44 home runs to lead the league in home runs, but he also led it in batting average and runs batted in for the famed Triple Crown, a feat not replicated for 45 years until 2012 when Miguel Cabrera did it for the Tigers. The other All-Star on the team was Tony C., and he was on pace to hit 34 home runs. And so in the 4th inning on August 18th, he stepped up to the plate against the California Angels, as they were known then. And he was facing Jack Hamilton. He'd already gone 2 for 2 that day. And Rico Petrocelli, the shortstop, the third All-Star on the team, was on the on-deck circle when Hamilton's lost control of his pitch. Tony tried to escape it, and in doing so knocked off his helmet, which offered no protection as the ball struck him. Rico Petrocelli would tell a reporter that he heard a sound that was like a fruit like a tomato squishing, and that sound was Tony C's cheek bone crushing upon getting hit by the pitch. Tony went down, and Rico was one of the first players to be by his side. He wrote in his memoirs that Tony's face was swelling up like there was something inside his skull blowing up a balloon. Blood was pouring out of his nose. Tony C was carried off the field and taken to a hospital in Cambridge. Doctors said that the ball had struck an inch higher and an inch to the right. He might have been killed. Coincidentally, Tony C was struck 47 years to the day after another potential future Hall of Famer, Cleveland Indians shortstop Ray Chapman, took a pitch from Carl Mays off the side of his head and died 12 hours later. Tony was unable to open his left eye for 2 weeks, and once he could, he suffered from double vision and limited depth perception. An ophthalmologist told him he had permanent damage to his retina, causing a blind spot in the center of his vision. There was concern he could lose sight in the eye completely, and the doctor told him it would not be safe to play baseball anymore. Tony C would miss the remainder of the season, but the impossible dream continued. The Red Sox would win the pennant in dramatic fashion on the last day of the season and make it into a classic 7-game World Series before losing in Game 7 at Fenway and being overpowered by the pitching of St. Louis Cardinals pitcher Bob Gibson. Red Sox first baseman George Scott said, "I've said it a million times. If Tony had been in the lineup, we would have won. He was one of those guys. Reggie Jackson was a big game player. Tony was that kind of player." Tony C was unable to play in 1968, but remarkably came back in 1969, big time. With 20 home runs, he was comeback player of the year, and he finished fourth in home runs the next year with 36. In 1971, the Red Sox traded Conigliaro to, of all teams, the California Angels. Headaches and bad vision began to take their toll, and he retired mid-season with only a .222 batting average and only 4 home runs. He was a mere 26 years old. Tony mounted a brief comeback in 1975 that lasted all of 22 games. I remember it well. There was a lot of excitement, and everyone in New England was pulling for him. Rico Petrocelli, in his memoir, writes, "When Conigliaro approached the plate for his first at-bat, a leggy, well-dressed, attractive female admirer sashayed down from the grandstand into the box seats and tossed a bouquet of red roses onto the field. At age 30, Tony still had the looks, the charisma, and the personality, but the talent had eroded." He retired after 21 games, with future Hall of Famer Jim Rice taking his place as designated hitter. The Red Sox would go on to play in the World Series that year as well, and losing in an epic battle in 7 games with the Cincinnati Reds. One can only imagine what would have been the result with a healthy Tony C. Tony went into broadcasting, first as a sportscaster in WJR in Providence, and then out west in San Francisco. And then in 1982, opportunity brought Tony back to Fenway. A new cable network was going to carry the Red Sox games and needed a color announcer. Tony came back to interview, and he thought it went really well. In fact, he thought he had the job. He was telling his brother, Billy, who also played for the Red Sox, as he drove him back to Logan Airport. Tony was going to go back to San Francisco, wrap up his things, and find his way back to Fenway at last. And then fate struck one last time. He had a massive heart attack on the en route. Billy went to the hospital instead, and by the time he got there, Tony was already in a coma. Tony never fully recovered and died of kidney failure at the age of 45 in 1990. Legendary Boston Globe writer Bob Ryan, who was at Fenway that fateful August night, stresses that you have to remember when Tony C came back and won Comeback Player of the Year and then hit 32 home runs the next year. He was fooling us. He was doing it with one eye. And there aren't enough laudatory adjectives to describe that achievement. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that a man who could do that against Major League pitching with one eye and who already had 100 homers in books before age 23 was going to have a pretty good career. No, I don't think we're exaggerating anything. Tony C was going to Cooperstown that night he was hit, and he wasn't going to have to buy a ticket when he got there, if you know what I mean. ESPN ranks Conigliaro as the 28th of the 100th greatest Red Sox of all time, and then following his death, the Red Sox created a Tony Conigliaro Award to honor a major leaguer who overcomes an obstacle. The first recipient, Jim Eisenrich, played 15 years in the majors with Tourette's syndrome, and most of those who followed overcame illnesses or injury, including in 2013 when John Lackey, who overcame Tommy John surgery, was able to help the Red Sox win the World Series for the third time in 10 years and the first time at Fenway since 1918. Now there is talk of making a Tony C movie or miniseries. I hear that sometimes in LA. Having heard the story, I hope you can agree it's a story worth telling. Thank you for listening to One Story. I'm Bennett Kelly.